Oh, look, we're looking forward to it big time. I think a lot of ground to cover because you've covered a hell of a lot of ground and have a lot to show for it and a lot of good expertise that I'd love to dig into some. But why don't you kick us off with a little bit of a background intro for anybody who doesn't know you, which should be everybody, but for anybody who doesn't.
Yeah, this is one of the leaders of the industry. One of my people I look up to in mentorship and how they speak, and I wish I could do what you do.
So thank you so much. So, um, I've been in the industry, I think 35 plus years, and I've spent a lot of time at different companies, about 13 years at maybe 18 actually total at the credit bureaus between TransUnion, where I really learned quite a bit about moving back and forth between operations and sales and learning the impact there, the difference between operations and getting 400 email a day and sales where you go, if I don't start something, I'm not doing anything today. So different.
An inbound lead, yes.
That's right.
I
And
think it
then
was probably early warning where you were at when I first met you. And that was, shoot, I don't know, a dozen years ago or so. And I know you've been all over since then to multiple cores and now at Mitek. And yeah.
yep, early warning was 2010. That's when I discovered AFT
Mhm.
and I was just thrilled, right? I mean, the whole idea at early warning was to take what they were selling to their owner banks and the top 100 banks and move downstream and create some kind of ubiquity in the industry so that any financial institution could get access to their product, right? And they had the top market wrapped up. And
I was
so
just saying they were mildly successful.
I would say they're mildly successful. That's right. And now they're so focused on Zelle, right? They have so much going on and so much success there.
Yep.
You bet.
But I found AFT and I told my manager, I said, this is like a dream come true. Everybody that we need to talk to in the partner industry to bring ubiquity is going to be at this meeting. And it's a small meeting and it's the C-level folks, right? It just doesn't get any better than that.
It
And
really doesn't.
fun.
This is what
It's
cool
like
is.
a
This is,
family reunion.
this is where I met you. But keep in mind, Tanner has told me this legend story about you and all your stuff. So I knew everything about you before I even met you. And so, and then I was like, well, you didn't tell me she's nice and her husband's so cool and everybody's, it was such a neat thing to meet you. And you gave a speech that I'm not kidding you. Just thinking about it gives me goosebumps. And I told you at the time I was going to steal half of that. Uh, just some great inspirational things that you said about, kind of look to your left, look to your right. These are the best there is and you're among your peers. I remember that line forever.
Mhm.
I think it's fantastic that you remember that. I often think that people remember how we made them feel, right? The quote from Maya Angelou, but they often forget what we actually said. And so I think it's great. And to your point, that's exactly what it is when you go to AFT. There's so many great people there, just people networking to make a difference, which is fun.
You bet.
One thing that I've seen over the years, there's let's just say a voice on LinkedIn, right? And these are not saying negative things about people, but there are people that are builders and creators and that are influential, and then there's people that are just plain old influential, right? When you get there and find people that have the depth in the background. Tanner, what was that line you said about 15 years? You spent 15 years learning what you thought you knew.
Yes,
Then
yes.
just the next 15 years understanding what you learned.
It's an industry with so much depth that I mean, it is decades, right? Before you realize how unprepared you really were to see even the depth, much less really have a good grasp of it. It's just too big. And I was telling Dad, and I was mentioning, you moving over to Mitek, and I made the joke. I'm like, I better buy some other stock because I always equate, when you have just the very small number of rock stars in the industry, wherever they go, it's really saying something. It's a vote of confidence. So I'd love to hear more about what you're so excited about and working on.
Yeah, it is really cool, and I'm so thankful to be here. Mitek is I don't know if you know much about their background, but they've been in the business of, capturing the image of the check for a really long time. And with check fraud being such a prominent, crazy thing that keeps growing, like who would think that check fraud is still going to be a problem?
Right. And it's a big one.
Yeah. And so what they've done is create a consortium of images to share among the financial institutions. So, what we were doing at early warning was pretty cool, right? You could take the routing and account number and you could say, hey, that's an open active account. But, early warning doesn't have the image. So the fraudsters, like water, they just find a new way. And, what they did next is they started stealing the checks out of the mailboxes,
Mhm.
a big check. So, hey, Tanner's going to make an investment. So I'll just clean or wash the payee name, make it out to me, take it to my bank. You know, whomever you made the investment to doesn't, they don't call you right away.
Right.
And you see that your check cleared on your mobile app, right? So you're like, oh yeah, my $13,000 check cleared, whatever amount it was. And then weeks later, we find out that, yeah, it was deposited somewhere else. And the fraudster is, way gone by then.
Right. Yeah, I remember actually you and I have done, I think this is like our third lifetime together to have this conversation on duplicate detection and different capture points and the difference between retail and business. And, I'm thinking from the bank side, what a challenge it is, for bankers trying to manage through that. And what a challenge it is from our side of the technology and piecing everything or stitching everything together sometimes, right? And so that's a cool problem to solve.
So
It
me and
is.
Tanner had a conversation one night. This is years ago. We were talking about REC, Mitek, and all the technology that these guys originated. And I was like, okay, so let's get the stopwatch out and you take a picture and I'll run into the bank lobby. Do I got to run a 4-2 or a 4-3? How fast do I got to be to get in there to beat you so I can cash that check and remote it? And he's like, impossible, man. Can't beat it. So
Yeah.
I figured out I wasn't quick enough.
It is so cool to think that, my tech being on the front end of mobile capture and then solving mobile deposit that's exciting.
Really cool. I want to ask you if you don't mind me picking your brain a little bit, but kind of on that topic of, industry experience. And I think banking experience is definitely something that I feel like the last few years has been a little, maybe the technology world has been a little frowny on bankers and banking knowledge, right? And I think we have a much larger appreciation for that and where technology and banking knowledge comes together and how hard and different those topics are, right? And then I think XN, you always just are an inspiring leader. So anything on taking all that knowledge and experience and, years and years to piece everything together and then thinking about the leadership of whether it's trying to accomplish a task, grow an organization, hire people, just kind of give us your cliff notes.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is whether we have worked at a bank, had experience at a bank, understand banking, whether we're in a technology company where we have innovation and invited to innovate. I think every moment, because the technology and the environment changes so quickly, there's always an opportunity to really listen to either the customer or the industry. And I think Jim Bala at Ensenta did that so well. He knew that I loved customer facing experiences, and he knew that I loved kind of thinking about innovation. And so he would ask me to go into all of the financial institutions, and we were dealing with the top 100. There were some really big banks that Ensenta was serving, and I had an opportunity to go and just sit with them and do what he called over the shoulder sessions. We would just sit and watch someone work and then ask them, why do you do this? Why do you do that? And just kind of be inquisitive, which is fun, right? And then take it back and say, holy cow, if we only had known, this is fantastic. If we do this, this, and this, we save them so much time.
The value of experience.
Yeah. And listening at the time of the innovation, I think it's just so key.
That's such a good call out. One that I used to do like that is anytime on a bank visit, if I had any spare time at all, I would go just make a quick stop and hang out in the call center for a minute. And just hearing
cool.
the answers to questions, and then you hear the same question on 4 different people's headset, right? And it's like, ooh, maybe that would be a nice spot to solve for, right? And then before you know it, you're digging through call logs, right? And digging through data points and just looking at what the inbound issues or problems or things that you could automate, and it's really interesting getting the boots on the ground feedback because again, I think to our point, this topic of banking is a big one, and I don't think any of us give it enough credit. I mean, we could all sit here and name off vocab words for the next hour that are just departments, right? Or sectors of the space. So there's a lot to know.
Xan, can I ask you a hard question?
Always.
That's why I'm here, buddy. Yeah. Okay. And again, I'll kind of preface this with a little bit of where are we, right? It's like, man, the more we innovate, the more problems we have. We have consent order everywhere. We got these problems, that problem. And it's like, and fraud just keeps growing like crazy and more payments, more fraud. And it's like, we're not getting better at this. We're actually kind of going the wrong direction, but we're going faster. And there's a lot of people that are like, hey, keep your progress. We don't want it. We've been doing this 100 years, and I think they're probably going to get killed. And then you've got the other guys out there going, innovate, and it's like, you're going to crash the ship into the shore for sure. And then we have this moment where you've got the technology like you have at your disposal. Can we do like a automated SAR imaging process that somehow stops fraud in its tracks from an image perspective? Is that reality?
An automated SAR.
So if we had like a suspicious activity report,
Yeah.
but instead of reporting a bad actor, we're reporting a bad image. And we could share that instantly across all spectrums through like the early warning. I'll put all your background together and you kind of see where I'm headed.
Oh, yeah.
Is that
Definitely.
possible?
I think what you're asking, and we'll get to the SAR part in a moment, but kind of what you're asking is what we do. For example, if you take someone's check, what we've done is we've created a consortium of images. So, Tanner's checkbook looks like this. He has this border. He writes like this. He signs like this. He puts A for April, not 4 for April. That's what his checkbook looks like. And we store that. And we have 5, 10, 15 images because maybe Tanner's wife also uses that same checkbook and she writes differently.
She does.
Right?
She does.
That's right. And so what happens is when the fraudster steals it, and then he takes a picture of the check with his mobile device, we're going, whoa, wait a minute. Someone washed the payee name and wrote in big loopy writing their name. Or they counterfeited the whole check. They just took his routing and account number and they created a whole new checkbook and the border's different, the locks, the images, everything on the check is different. So within seconds of someone making a mobile deposit, we're telling them that's not a good check, right? And because it's a collaborative consortium across financial institutions, it's so valuable, right? Because everyone's working together to fight the check fraud. And if we don't, we're not going to win. We know the fraudsters are, right? They're sophisticated. They're not low lifes anymore. They're sophisticated, sitting in offices somewhere, doing really cool things. And so we have to collaborate as well. And that's, Mitek's doing a really good job attacking the market the way it needs to be attacked today.
So good idea, Pop, but XM beat you to it. Better luck next time.
Damn it. I mean, it's like the water on the windshield wiper. I had that.
That was a good idea. That's great. Exxon, I want to just touch a little bit. I know we're like edging towards it, but I'm thinking about the regulatory landscape. And I know you're one of the few people who actually likes things like risk and compliance and that side of the world, right? And lives and breathes it. Just give me a little perspective on what you see there. I think my head to Dad's point is just there's so much so fast. I can barely keep up with the change, and I don't even have a day job other than keeping up with this shit, right? So it's just the velocity of change is unbearable right now. So I just want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I do. I think the financial institutions are burdened, right? You read that all the time in LinkedIn news, New York Times, whatever, that the financial institutions are burdened with more and more compliance and regulatory regulations that they have to follow. But you can use those to your advantage as well. And I think that's what financial institutions can do with services, right? For example, I think something that's somewhat interesting is if someone washes a check, the depositing bank, the bank of first deposit, is the one who is regulatory liable for a washed check. And so being able to alert them immediately that this is a problem is valuable, right? Whereas when you get an in clearing, right? So I've deposited my check, now it's going into Tanner's account, it's coming in as in clearing, which you guys know so well, but comes in as in clearing first thing in the morning. If we check those against the, Mitek consortium as well, then we're able to say, hey, wait a minute, the paying bank's liable for the counterfeits. So why don't we tell them, not only do you have a check out there that's been deposited that's an altered check, but you also have checks in here that are counterfeit checks, and you're liable for these. And so just playing off the speed of processing so that they can beat the regulatory requirements that they're up against, I think is helpful.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, good
So,
call.
so okay, I'm a bank. I didn't know anything about this. How do I join? What do I do? How does this work?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've had so much great collaboration with ICBA. Love Scott and Kevin and the team over there. They have a check fraud task force that they allowed us to present to, which was really helpful. But basically, just reach out to Mitek at Mitek's website, and we'll help anyone get access to the solution.
Awesome.
Yes,
Is it making a difference?
what's that?
Are we winning?
Yeah, we're winning. Oh, my
Really?
favorite is if you go to G2. So G2 is a commercial site where you rate vendors, right? And HTLF Bank put out a testimonial on G2 for Mitek service that said, we mitigated $1 million in 6 months just on the in clearing side.
Wow.
That's huge,
Awesome.
right? How cool is that?
That's great. Well, and does this help on anything on the AML BSA side as well? When they improve in this area, do they get like a gold star, a cookie, or anything?
You know what? From a regulatory perspective, and I know you've seen in the news, so many financial institutions have, been slapped on the hand for AML type of activity.
Haven't seen any of that.
I know, right? But I actually think that the alerts that Mitek generates, which we provide, a file at the end of the day that we can send over to the BSA AML providers for SAR reporting, et cetera, right?
Right.
Think about this on the mobile side. Who's making a deposit with a washed check? Probably one of two people, right? It's either the bad guy, money mule, bad synthetic account, etc. So highlighting that and identifying it first thing, and then shoving that over, pushing that over to the AML BSA provider so that they can then track all that structured account activity, right? You're giving them a heads up. So yes, I think that could be helpful. The other type of person that's depositing that check is probably a scammed consumer, right? Oh, you can work from home. I accidentally sent you $13,000. Please wire me, or P2P, 10 grand and keep 3 for yourself. Well,
Cool.
if we alert them fast enough, we might be able to help them stop before before the consumer actually wires the money.
Love
That's
it.
great. That's probably where a lot of the elderly people get smoked. Is it looked legit, right? Like, oh, they really did. So I need to write this and help them out, and then I'm going to be a good citizen and take care of that today. So you're kind of catching a whole bunch of things in one move there.
It's great. Accent, I just want to shift gears. I know we only got a few minutes left here. You can tell I'm kind of itching at you a little bit. I want to just hear from you, just I think it's just so valuable, your worldview, your industry view, just how you look at everything from leadership. And I don't know, you're just always brighter than everybody, more chipper, running faster, doing cooler stuff, smart. You know what I mean? It's just
Right.
you're a
The
winner on
smart
all
people are
fronts.
usually angry and
Yeah,
just happy,
right.
right?
You're just a winner on all fronts, and everybody likes you. And what is your mantra? I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, first of all, you're just going to make me blush. That's just crazy. But I think it's interesting. I love that book. I think it's called The Ideal Team Player, but it really should be called Humble, Hungry, and Smart, because every HR person is really looking for that kind of person, and I strive to be that because I love the passion that you can put into whatever job you're doing, right? I think, remember the guy that did the dirty jobs? He used to
Yeah.
say, remember that show? He
Yeah,
used to
Mike
say,
Rowe. Yeah,
yeah, he'd say, whatever you do it your best, right? It doesn't matter what you're doing. So I think that's really important. And there's so many people that help people become who they are that, don't you love it when you watch professional sports and you see them thanking their coach or their, whomever it is that helped them get there, the rest of their team, because no one's doing it by themselves. So I think that's really important as well. And I think Tom Shen has been just a huge example of how to be a servant leader. And so when people call me, I had a young lady out of Europe call me just last week, and she said, "Hey, I kind of want to know a little bit about, how do you broach into this market for partnerships?" And I said, "This is going to be fun. You got to come to AFT. I will be your ambassador, right?" And that's what Tom would do. He would just set someone up for success, and I think that's fun.
yeah. I
It's
mean,
huge when you take people that have the knowledge to vet and say good actor, bad actor. Okay, good actor, positive for the community. Come with me, buddy.
Yep.
When you do things like that, and by the way, when you talked about that, I remember Tom Shen giving a speech about servant leadership and looking over at you on the other side of the room, wiping tears off your face. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
I
That's
think
the
you
passion
introduced him,
that you're talking about right now. That passion.
Yeah, I did introduce him. You're right, Tanner. And I had to speak after that, and I was so choked up
Yes.
because he just sets such a great example, and everything he said was so powerful to, just leading by example and being kind and, just really, really great leader. When I was laid off in April 2nd. I got to tell you this. Dan thinks he's so funny. He comes up here on April 1st. He's like, "Oh, it's and Dell's been laying people off like crazy." He says, "Oh, you won't believe it. I just got laid off. My whole team got laid off." And I'm just freaking out. And he says, "April Fools." I'm like, "What?" I told him, I said, "Dan, people like you and me get laid off all the time. You can't joke like that." April 2nd at 2 o'clock. My boss calls me. He's like, "I'm so sorry. You've done such a great job, but I got to lay you off." Like, Dan thought
You
I
were
was,
waiting on the April Fool's part, right?
I'm like, "Apparently this is a day late, so it's not a joke."
Oh no.
I love it. I love it.
But,
I
I
have
called,
to
I
tell you
called
guys,
and I'm so thankful. Within 3 days, it was a good business offer. So I'm just thankful to be here.
that's so cool. I hope for all the bankers watching, I don't know that I know that community bankers have a super strong sense of community, obviously with each other. But I don't know if, if everybody just thinks that all the technology folks are all separate, or we have our own community. And to your point, there's a lot of people that work really hard to take really good care of the community, help the community, and work as a collective and for the betterment of all. And there's some seriously good people, right? We're not all like the writing the nasty contracts. I mean,
Well, there's like this
technology
perception
landscape is full
Tanner,
of.
that is so good, brilliant. What the bankers think is that there's like a bunch of us smoking weed in California, right? And then the vendor guys think the bankers have none of it's correct. The bankers are hanging on every word that a consultant says on LinkedIn. I'm like, not really, right? We're kind of talking to each other. So there's misperceptions out there that are massive. And this is back to what Xan's talking about. Man, the people that have been there, done that, got tons of experience, understand the world. They're builders, creators, doers, as opposed to talkers, right? And I think that linkage of leadership in the banking industry and linkage of leadership on, let's just say, the services side, they need to connect at a high level. So much more important that happen today than in the past, because we have misinformation and misunderstanding, lack of depth in technology, too much depth in technology and not enough banking, right? Too much
Problems are
pepper on the salt.
bigger and bigger problems.
What do you think? Can we fix that?
Yeah.
I don't know if we can fix that or not.
Hey, I want to give you just a minute here for
That
final
was the wrong answer. We're supposed to be, hell yeah, we can fix that.
I want you to, take a minute on final thoughts. Just anything that you want to share, anything that's on your mind, anything. What should we all be talking about? What are you thinking about?
Well, one, I want to thank you for inviting me onto the podcast. I think it's fantastic. I remember meeting you guys at a Q2 conference back when Q2 was small enough to sit around a bonfire, at a ranch. So it was fantastic. And I appreciate that. And I think, it's really, whether it's within a product or within an AFT, collaboration and communication in our industry is going to help us in everything we do, whether it's fighting fraud or just solving for other product solutions that we're looking for.
I love it. I think every time somebody talks like that, especially you, I can't help but think my way all the way down the stream to the guy on Main Street, right? I mean, that's what we're all doing. And we're sometimes so far up above, upstream of that we forget that, but it's exactly what you're talking about. I think that is a big point of inspiration every time I walk down to Main Street, it's pretty cool. So you're the greatest. We love you. You're so awesome. Thank you for coming on. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Same. See you soon.